Hey, a funny thing happens. We don't talk about dreams, right? We learned very early on that there's nothing more boring.
We learned there is nothing more boring than listening to somebody talk about their own dreams.
I'm going to just turn you off so that
For sure.
This is just very briefly. I think I don't need to dream anymore. So when was it? Friday night. Last night, I realized that I don't need to have any more dreams because I had the dream to end all dreams.
Wow.
I was doing shots with Bruce Springsteen.
Oh my God.
And I woke up so happy. He also seemed to be keen on giving me some sound recording advice, which I thought was a little dubious, the advice in my dream. So yes, I did shots with Bruce Springsteen in my dreams, and that's the end of the story. This is a podcast in which two friends talk about the pleasures, absurdities, and imperfections of being human. I'm Simon Ellis.
And I'm Lee Miller. Welcome to Midlifing.
Have you got something that you're desperate to talk about today?
Oh, absolutely not. I've got nothing. I come to you with a head like a hollowed-out cantaloupe.
Because I've got a couple of...
just hit me. Hit me with your best shot. Birdum.
Oh,
that sounds like a heavy thing.
Yeah, it was actually something that Finn told me a story ages ago, and it was quite an interesting conversation I had with him, and I thought that it's something that happened at school and how he dealt with it, and it really made me curious about what you would think about the situation. Shall I tell you about it?
Yeah, for sure.
So it was in the classroom. He overheard a colleague, a peer, a classmate, say quite simply that gay men are disgusting and gay women are hot. And so just to drop that straight in there. And Finn said, that's homophobic. And my question is not about I don't think you and I would have particularly, the sort of dickishness of it, or the absolutely kind of the sort of implicit violence, you might even say, of it, is we could agree on that, right? But my question really was, and it was a question that Finn and I talked about a lot, was how is it to respond to that? And is there any way that an opinion that you could even imagine that saying something to a situation like that could change someone's opinion? So not so much about the wrongness or the rightness of it, but about how it is that,
So I'm going to occupy. I'm going to occupy the position that you usually occupy. And I'm going
you mean sitting on the fence?
Well, no, not sitting on the fence, but I'm not going to immediately leap to kind of like some, this is how he should be schooled. I think what Finn did was textbook perfect response. To say that's homophobic. You call out the behaviour and you just leave it at that. Because what you do is you mark the moment. It allows Finn to walk away from that exchange without feeling in any way, shape or form implicated in the assertion that's being made. But
he is saying he's right. Finn is saying that he's not saying, I think that's homophobic. He's saying he's calling it as that. He's saying that there's no question that, because what if the person comes back and says, no, it's not?
Then you just kind of go, well, it is, and that's it. I think Finn is right to not get into a debate. It's a statement of fact. To say that a protected class of people are disgusting is hate speech. Full stop. Yeah. It's not debatable according to the 2010 Equality Charter or whatever it's called. Equality Act, you know the one that lays out what the 2010, that lays out protected characteristics within UK law. So kind of from an empirical perspective, to say that is homophobic is factually accurate. It would be held up in a court of law, sort of thing. I mean, it wouldn't be, because we know that the legal system is problematic. But certainly there are laws in place to protect, to ensure that protected characteristics are not, don't experience those kinds of, or shouldn't experience those kinds of verbal or physical attacks. So in that sense, Finn does the right thing. He points out that is homophobic. So it is a sense of right and wrong. I think it's not helpful for us to get in a grey area here.
Yes, except I'm not talking about. I'm just using this as an example to go, well, what is it? Yeah, is it even possible to begin to imagine how this person has come to that belief, and to engage in a conversation so that understanding comes out of a conversation, as opposed to calling out, "You're wrong,"
Who do you want the understanding to be for, Simon?
Well, I would like to imagine that someone who, in this case, a young man who's come to. Well, I don't think a probably a uncommon couple of assertions. I think there was something pretty common about what he was, the things he said. That wouldn't be an uncommon idea or thought to have. And so what I'm curious about is what kind of conversation to have that might change that person's understanding, that might reveal something about their understanding to them. Like, is it even possible?
I don't think it's possible in a single conversation, and I also don't think it's anybody's responsibility to do that.
So what changes then? What's changed by Finn saying, in this case, that's homophobic?
These are cumulative experiences. They're not singular. So, if that person is able to encounter change, and I have no reason to believe that they're not, because everybody is capable of change, they need to negotiate it when they can hear it. I'm not sure that doubling down on, calling somebody homophobic or racist or classist or
whatever.
I'm not sure that you're trying to move the needle in a moment of high temperature, aren't you? Because I think,
but not the needle. Hang on, the needle. That's a cultural thing, or about that person,
that person,
that specific exchange.
That specific exchange. You stepped into a moment of confrontation. No matter how gently you confront somebody.
Yes, in fact, you might even say that there was no confrontation until Finn, because this person, from an incredibly entitled position, is just saying shit, right?
Yeah,
and that it was only until Finn said, that's homophobic, that it becomes a confrontation, or has the potential to become a confrontation.
I think what Finn has done is, in that moment, he has said, "You are wrong."
Yeah.
Yeah? That is confrontational.
Yeah.
Absolutely the right choice. There's no critique about the fact that it's confrontational, but it is a moment of confrontation. So, Finn has contributed to turning the temperature up.
Yes, he has.
And wisely, there's no follow-on.
Yes.
Because you can't have this is not coming from a place of holier than thou-ness. If somebody tells me I'm wrong, it's
not coming from a place of what?
Holier than thou-ness.
Oh, gotcha.
If somebody says to me I am wrong, I cannot hear why I am wrong until I have calmed down. Because they've told me I'm wrong, and I'm like, "Fuck you! I'm not wrong, because I'm always right."
I mean, who in the history of the planet has ever enjoyed being told they're wrong?
Exactly.
Oh yes, thank you. I'm wrong.
Yeah, and it's a process of working out how often we are wrong in life that allows us to more quickly be able to say, nope, you're right, that was a shit. Oh, God, no, I misspoke. You know, I'm just thinking about the number of times that me and Bob have had an argument, and Bob has been objectively right. There's just no debate. Yeah? and if she were listening... Which
I like it in front of a court of law. Oh, yeah. If she were listening.
If she were listening, she would be very generous in this moment to go, no, that's not true. I'm not always objectively right. But I cannot think of very many exchanges that we've had over nearly 30 years where she has been on the wrong side of the debate. And I will, I will spend, not hours, but I will, historically, I would have spent a significant amount of time explaining why I am correct. And usually, there was a point where Bob wouldn't say anything, and then there was a point where Bob would argue back, and now we've got to a point where I will go, no, you're absolutely... I'm sorry, I'll just stop talking now and just have a moment to think. Yeah, you're right. But that's like 30 years worth of training, of being in an interpersonal relationship with somebody, yeah? I don't mean training by Bob. I mean training as in...
Right, Lee, this morning we're going to start with some sit-ups, some push-ups, and then some holier-than-thou-ness, and we're going to follow through with a bit of contrition.
So interesting that you
10
went
repetitions of contrition.
It's so interesting that when I said training, that's where you went. I immediately thought click training, and I was going to be given treats. Positive reinforcement. I am immediately being treated like a dog. I am not going to do sit-ups. I am absolutely going to be
bits
taken...
of chicken. Little bits of chicken in Bob's pocket.
Yeah.
Here you go. Sit, boy, sit.
What? Or more like, inappropriate comment. Oh, no inappropriate comment. Well done. Here's the chicken.
You get a little whack over the nose for an inappropriate comment.
No, positive reinforcement is the only way that you teach people.
Yeah,
and actually,
no stick, so.
in a way, as silly as that dog analogy is, it's actually quite a useful one. Jeffrey doesn't learn... Jeffrey's never had a hand raised to him in this house. Jeffrey's never had a hand raised to him. So Jeffrey would not learn by being smacked. Jeffrey doesn't learn if you shout at him. If you don't do that. I mean, he just looks at you and goes, what? You have to draw his attention away from the thing that he's interested in and tell him how clever he is for coming to see you. Yeah? That's how Jeffrey works. And I think that human beings are no more complicated than dogs in that respect.
So what you are saying is that Finn should walk around school with little bits of chicken in his pocket, and then... But I don't see... So how is saying, in this case, you're homophobic? Well... I guess the training thing is, I'm not sure. I don't like the word in this context or the analogy in a way.
I was talking about me. I absolutely was talking about me.
I know. We're being slightly facetious anyway. But there's also something about, I guess I'm thinking about, this is where it's dangerous ground in a way from my perspective, because it's still coming from the position where I think what's right, in the sense that there's an opportunity. How is it that this young man might start to think about the world differently? And maybe what I think you're saying is that Finn saying that's homophobic is enough.
Yes, because I think I'm hearing it feels like there's a contradiction in your anxiety. That you don't want to train him, but you want his behaviour to change.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There's something that absolutely there's a contradiction.
Yeah, that feels contradictory to me. Either we go, actually, we don't need to worry about change.
No. That was my no. I want to. Sorry, it's definitely there's contradiction. It's something about the word training, which I think is weird.
Yeah, I know, but I think actually at the heart of the question has been a sort of a sense of contradiction that you want to resist the idea of. You don't like training. You want to come into a conversation, but you still effectively want that person to change in a way that will satisfy what you need from them. You're not going to accept that his perspective might have validity.
No, that's not the case at all. I'm more interested in him in understanding the validity of his position. Right? So
No,
that's
you
what I'm.
totally lost me. You want to understand the validity of homophobia. That's what I just heard, and I'm sure that's not what you mean.
Well, I'm just saying he's got there, right? He's got there. He has this thought. He has these feelings and these experiences. And what I'm trying to say is that how is it that I might come to understand that, so that there's some sense of, and again, I'm not saying that it's right, but I want to know what kind of dialogue I could be in with, or how to shape a dialogue or a conversation with a person who has that kind of thought or that kind of feeling, such that it doesn't just become a kind of calling out of the behavior, that there's more to just saying you're wrong.
Still not getting what you want from the end of the conversation, though.
Or a conversation. Like how do you go about having a conversation?
But I don't understand to what end. This is the bit that I'm struggling with, Simon. What's the purpose of the conversation? What do you want to happen at the end of it?
Well, at least genuinely, I would like to be able to imagine that there's something to be something to be gained for both people to be involved in a conversation. That's some kind of understanding about where it is that how it is that we've come to think particular things in our lives, and to try and make sense of where we come to think and how we come to think those things, regardless about the wrongness or rightness of them.
But I don't get that.
You mean you can't entertain the possibility that someone thinks those things and that they've thought
no,
those
I
things?
completely understand.
And that
people
that person should not be allowed to think those things.
I don't think that. No, I don't think that either. What I'm saying is I don't know what the purpose of the conversation is, because I kind of understand why they think those things. Because it's
how can you possibly know that?
Because it's a combination of social and familial training in the same way yours and mine is. And either we're responding to or we're responding against. So it doesn't feel like I need to understand how they could possibly be there, unless I'm wanting to somehow shift their perspective. And I don't think it's anybody's job to shift their perspective. I think Finn needed to say that's homophobic for Finn, not for the other person.
I can't speak on Finn's behalf in that respect, because
Okay, I'm projecting myself into Finn in this moment. Yeah, so I'm imagining saying that's homophobic. I need to say that. I need to put a marker down, so that in this particular social exchange, I am not complicit with an ideology or a perspective or a worldview or a way of being that makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't want on any level to seem to say that is okay. I don't need to do anything beyond saying I'm not okay with that. I mean, I suppose you could say I'm not okay with that. But I'm again,
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm not disagreeing with that.
Yeah. I know that I don't know. I think that the pause is that we're encountering my apparent intransigence, that I don't want to get into a conversation with this imaginary person. Or in this case, it's a real person, but
who we're imagining.
We've made imaginary.
But where I'm trying to ride that paradox, and it is or contradiction, as you rightly said, which is that I think something's gone wrong, right? I think something's gone wrong in the sense that here's a young man who's, even if it was just outrageous bravado, or a way of how do you say, trying to get a rise out of people. Like he just might have been shit stirring, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That I'm fascinated by, or want to know what it is about that human being that's got him to there, and that there might be other ways for him to think about the world. So that's the contradiction, which is the training thing which you picked up on, but also also wanting to be in a conversation, and the possibility that I might understand homophobia differently in this case, or I might understand this human being differently, that my capacity to be connected to and understanding of this human being might be changed by that, by an exchange with him. But I don't know how to have that. I wouldn't know how to have that exchange. And I don't think saying that's homophobic. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's a genuine question. When I'm saying I don't know, it's because I really don't know. But I don't think it's enough. I think, yes, for me, it would be enough to go, in the sense, to call it out and go, okay, I've said my thing and not allowed that to be, I haven't just given it a pass by my silence, right? Yep, I can get that. But like, to me, that's all that does is it well, not all it does, but the possibility that all it does is fucking hell. The possibility that one of the things that happens as a consequence of that is just a understanding of being in common. But I'm trying to mark, by saying it, I'm trying to mark myself as different. So I'm trying to get at that. I don't know if that's helping at all.
Well, I mean, it might help me why you want to have the conversation, because it helps. Yeah, I'm stuck behind something that I can't find words for, or even find the edges of, to start to peel back.
I mean, I don't want to, in those times, in a situation like that, I mean, I really applaud Finn. I'm not suggesting it's I'm not saying that he made a mistake or anything like that. I think he's far braver in those things than I am. Absolutely far braver than I am. But I guess I'm trying to get at, I'm trying to recognize being in common, as opposed to being indifferent, you might say. Indifference, or it's not that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, opposition.
Yeah. And perhaps you're right in the sense that there's nothing to be gained from the sense of being in common. Although, I think that the profound polarization of politics, I mean, certainly in the United States, but I think to a lesser extent in the UK as well, is the more we keep playing with how we are different, the worse that gets. I don't see how it gets better by saying, as you said just then, theming and using.
No, I don't disagree with that. I think maybe I can find the edge, and maybe I can peel something back, and perhaps what I find underneath it is just my hypocrisy. In that, in that I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you, and I think theming and using is really deeply problematic and continues to just create these horrifying rifts down which we fall, and perhaps understanding is what is needed. And we have extrapolated from a story from a 17-year-old.
Sure.
In a wider social context, which if we do cast ourselves back to being 17-year-olds, I remember being this is one of those. I remember being the subject of homophobic attacks, which is hilarious as a man who's never slept with men. But homophobia is not about where you put your dick. Homophobia is about when we encounter something which doesn't look like the version of masculinity which we think is supposed to be preeminent.
Yeah.
And by attacks, I just mean bullying. I don't mean. I've said this before that I've never had the shit kicked out of me, so it's not that sort of stuff. But there has been. I'm trying to remember who it was who wrote about it. Somebody wrote about it recently. Might have been Owen.
Oh, what's his face?
The guy who wrote Chavs. Jones? Owen Jones? Is that right?
Yeah, Owen Jones sounds right.
It might have been Owen Jones who
he
was
writes in
writing
The Guardian.
it. But it might not have been him. It feels like the kind of thing he would have written about. And I don't mean that sounded dismissive and
no, but
snide,
he's certainly he writes a lot about homophobic attacks and Yeah.
And he was talking about this idea, or writing, somebody who I'm going to claim is Owen Jones, and there might be a link in the show notes if this conversation makes it into the edit.
Well, it's the only conversation we've got so far. So
but this bit,
part of it.
I suppose this part of it, yeah.
Hell, we better start again now.
But somebody was writing about the idea that, well, actually, homophobic attacks against straight men are something that we need to think about, not because they deserve more concern than homophobic attacks against gay men, but it speaks to
the same problem.
Yeah, exactly. It speaks to the homophobia that is riven through society. Okay, so just to kind of put that's sort of like the asterisk over the top of it. But I remember being 17 and being called a puff by people who hated me. And I remember being called a puff by people who didn't hate me. And so both of them are use, it's a use of homophobic language to, it's also a very British word, and one that's fallen very deeply out of favour, and I'm very happy for that. But
it sounds so. It's these days it sounds so kind of light, doesn't it? Like it's strangely.
But the shame that was attached to it was no less.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In 1987 or whatever.
Yeah.
It would have been 1990 when I was 17. So those people who I was effectively in a friendship group with, who were using homophobic language as a kind of whether it was comedic or whether there was something sharper at the heart of it. I was in dialogue with those people. I wasn't in dialogue with the people who were yelling it out of car windows as they drove past. So the conversation and the ability to meet with the... I think it's probably because in my head there's something... I've kind of got a more polarized setting. So I've got the person who I'm in social dialogue with who says something homophobic, and I say... That's Jeffrey having a scratch. I say, that's homophobic. That's not... No. So I think in my head I've kind of... There's something polarised that's happened. So I've got I've got the homophobe who I'm in dialogue with, and I've got the homophobe who screams out of the window. And I suppose what I'm saying is... I think, or what I'm starting to think is, the homophobe who yells out of the window... I don't know what the interface is. I don't know what the value is. I don't know what the possible outcome of a conversation could be. To teach me what? To teach me that person is so deeply uncomfortable in the world, whether that's through entitlement, whether that's through a feeling of abject loss of position, whether, there's all sorts of, sociological things that we could place on that. But there's very little I can do to intervene as an individual into that person's narrative, given that they feel able to scream something out of a window,
which is different from as you say,
absolutely
a social situation or in a. So that was a weird. I mean, thanks for the conversation, by the way. I find them, it really challenges me. It really challenges the kind of way, and also I think there's a particular kind of naivety I bring to them as well, sort of, which I'm always a bit uncertain about. But
I get really mad because there's a stridency that I bring to them, and I sometimes think I can't hear anything except my own righteousness, which I get really frustrated with and try and fix in the edit.
He's making myself sound less righteous in the edit. Show title.